Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another episode of FPC Radio Live. It is Monday, December the 12th. It's 12/12, John, but we're not quite celebrating Tom Brady today on a normal Tom Brady day, or at least the day that I've adopted as Tom Brady Day. Actually, no, Super Bowl Sunday. This is like your half birthday. But nonetheless, 12/12 is not your celebratory day like it has been in years past, as the Buccaneers are coming off quite a shellacking at the hands of the 49ers. And Brock Purdy is very, very impressive, very Purdy. I know. I'm sorry, folks. I apologize. I shouldn't have made that terrible, terrible joke. But no, it was very embarrassing if you're the Buccaneers, because they got just demolished at every level, of the game, special teams, defense, offense, just everything, coaching, just a absolute terrible, terrible Sunday for the Buccaneers, but they're still in first place in the division. So thank whoever for the NFC South, John.
Well, I mean, thanks Tom Brady in a sense, because if he doesn't have that miracle comeback last Monday night against the New Orleans Saints, you'd have all four teams in the NFC South at 5-8. So fortunately for the Buccaneers, Brady pulled that game off Monday night. They're 6-7. New Orleans is 4-9, and then you got Carolina and Atlanta at 5-8. It's just an awful division, which I still think Tampa Bay is going to find a way to win. Where are the wins coming from when Carolina, Atlanta, and New Orleans play? So again, they could get in at 8-9 and host a wild card game against the Commanders, the Giants, maybe even the Detroit Lions. I don't know. Like the NFC is just so up for grabs at this point. But nonetheless, yeah, that was a horrible performance. And again, you're facing perhaps the best roster in the NFL, right? I mean, I think you can make a case that the 49ers are right there with the Eagles and Bills and Bengals and Chiefs and maybe the Cowboys. Those are probably the six best teams in football. And San Francisco did a number on them yesterday.
Now, of course, the bad news coming out of San Francisco is obviously the injury to Deebo Samuel, because that looked serious, obviously getting carted off. And I want to speculate as to the extent of the injury, but given where we are, the time of the season, it seems like it's probably very likely that he's not going to suit up the rest of the year, which is a huge blow to a team that, just lost their starting quarterback. Although, Brock's come in and played very well. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out in the NFC, which again, it just keeps the door open for this Buccaneers team that, as bad as they look, they look bad, and it's I'm finding it very hard to find a reason as to why I think that they can go beyond a one and done playoff round. And the only reason I still, maybe am a little delusional is because they have Tom Brady. This team is a 2-win team without Tom Brady under center this year. And I know this is going to draw the ire of some in Bucs Nation there, but that's the reality. This team is poorly coached. They lack discipline. And for all the talk about this great defense, they got absolutely shredded again yesterday, John. And I know the numbers, the total points allowed is impressive, but the reality of it is this team doesn't create turnovers. It has moments of just inability to cover receivers, and for whatever reason, looked like they didn't do any sort of game planning for this 49ers offense, because, well, what did they do? They did exactly what Miami did last week and tried to blitz the hell out of Brock Purdy. And what happened? They got burnt every single time. So to me, they were set up to fail, and they did. Because on top of that, they had their two starting safeties out of the game, which isn't going to make things any better for them. But it was a bad performance from start to finish, and it just looked like they were not ready to compete right off the get-go.
Yeah, and then you throw a 68-yard touchdown pass to get you back in the game, and it's called back because Donovan Smith's called for his sixth holding call of the season. I mean, he's ready to foul out of an NBA game at this point. So, and that didn't even come as a surprise, right? Once the touchdown scored, you're like, okay, we see this lag. We know what the call is going to be, and that little momentum you may have been able to gain from that touchdown pass is gone. And then San Francisco just took over from there and did what a good team is supposed to do, and kind of wouldn't say mailed it in the second half, but they were up 28-0 at the half, and they just took care of business going forward in the second half. That's a really good football team in San Francisco. If they show up on Super Bowl Sunday, I wouldn't be shocked. I mean, they're that good. Even with Brock Purdy under center, he seems to be a guy that has all the intangibles, makes the right decisions. Deebo Samuel, they're talking about it being a high ankle sprain, which, is a very, very difficult injury. Maybe they're the divisional round. They're going to play in the wild card at home. They should be able to beat that team without Deebo Samuel. But maybe when you get to the divisional round and you're going to, I don't know, Minnesota or whatever, you get them for that, and now your offense is complete. Tampa, that was shocking. I thought it would be a competitive game. In fact, I picked Tampa to win because I was all in that, Brady going back to the Bay Area, only the second time, was going to be fired up. He could have played the game of his life. They weren't going to win. San Francisco is just better.
Yeah, and that's I think that wouldn't have been surprising. That's something you can kind of build off. So being 6-7 at this point isn't again, it isn't the end of the world, certainly for a team in this division, but they just didn't compete really at any stage in this game, and for a team that Tom Brady has to be perfect for this team, and I mean perfect as in perfect, like Mr. Perfect. For this team to have a chance. All he has to do is miss a couple throws, and that shot goes out the window. That's how poor this team is, and that's how small the margin of error is with this football team right now. Excuse me. And we see it every week. We see it every single week. I mean, the insistence, on top of, again, their early down offense consists of two things, John: running up the middle or throwing a screen pass. It's not that hard to guess which is which when you're lining up on defense. So these issues are continuing to plague the Buccaneers. And when you come out and you're down 14 points after getting steamrolled over the first two drives, and you come out and do the same damn thing, well, guess what? These problems aren't getting fixed. There's no change that's going to happen right now, short of someone coming in and completely taking over Todd Bowles' body and changing and installing an entirely new coaching scheme over the course of the next few days, and that's just not going to happen. So, just disappointing from a sense that you think this team has the talent, and I've been guilty of that. I think Chris Godwin is not healthy yet. He's not the same guy after that injury. Now, we know that takes some time to get back together, so it's not a permanent thing, or at least we hope it's not a permanent thing with him. For all the talent in the world that Mike Evans has, there's just something missing in his game. And I'm not saying it's all his fault. Him and Brady have not been on the same page the entire season. But the perception is that there's lack of an effort or lack of confidence, and maybe that trickles down to just being defeated before you're even defeated. You know what I mean? Like, maybe there's just a little bit of that loser mentality seeping in before they actually fail at what they're trying to do. That's how bad it's been. But it's just nothing's working for this team, whether they hate the game plan, whether they hate the coach, whether Mike Evans hates Tom Brady. We saw them get into a little back and from the sidelines yesterday. I don't know. I don't know what it is, but example, and look, this is a tough play to make, so I'm not knocking Mike Evans for it, but this is kind of speaks to the little bit of a disconnect these two have right now. That throw that Brady missed in the end zone, and he missed it. He did not miss it by throwing it behind him. No, that in my opinion was right read, because if you go back and watch, it looked like the defender was clearly sitting underneath and had that whole area kind of covered. So Mike Evans may have looked like he was open, but the reality of it is Brady probably saw the defender and thought, okay, how do you stop this? Well, you got to throw it behind the receiver and hope that the receiver makes that adjustment. He did. It was low. And that was what I commented on when people were jumping over the pass being behind him. I was like, no, it wasn't behind him. It was low. But that's a play where, like, it's tough to make if you're the receiver. But it seemed like Mike Evans wasn't even aware of that being a possibility. Like, and I don't want to hear like, oh, well, he was running to the corner. No, I mean, this is part of, we see receivers make adjustments all the time to quarterbacks. We see receivers use their instinct to read the quarterback. And that's something where I thought Brady read something, Mike Evans didn't. and that disconnect has been kind of there all season, and something that's popped up sometimes in the worst timing too, and that's just something I don't see being fixed anytime soon.
No, I mean, obviously the wide receiver has a slight adjustment. You don't want to run into the defender. The quarterback doesn't want to lead the wide receiver into the defender and potentially for an interception or get the wide receiver lit up. So you kind of sit down into the zone or wherever you're going and you get to the open spot and the quarterback reads it. So there is a disconnect there. This is a team, Ian, that's averaging, 17 points per game on offense. Yeah. Only twice have they scored more than 20 points in a game. And you look at it and say you have Tom Brady and Mike Evans. And I think you bet on talking about Chris Godwin. It's going to take him till next year to be right. But unfortunately, Tom Brady is not going to be playing in Tampa Bay next year. He's either going to retire or be playing somewhere else. I mean, I would be shocked if he goes back to Tampa next year. It just doesn't seem like he's having the time of his life to, quote Sergio Dip. He's going to play somewhere else. So it's just one of these things that nothing has worked for them this year. And you get the coaching change, and now Bruce Arians looks a little bit better than we thought, during the 2 years where he won a Super Bowl in his first year and tied Green Bay for the best record in the second year. Maybe Bruce Arians is a better coach than people want to give him credit for because Todd Bowles has done nothing. The strange thing about Todd Bowles is normally defensive coaches, the guys that are the defensive coaches who become head coaches, aren't they kind of fiery on the sideline? Like I watched Robert Saleh of the Jets, right? He looks like he's ready to go out and cover a punt. You remember the Rex Ryan when he was with the Jets or with Buffalo. You're kind of an intense guy. Bill Parcells. Belichick, not necessarily, but he's more of an X and O guy.
Yeah, but his presence alone is kind of that intensity.
Right. Yeah, he's kind of almost like, a quiet guy that everybody's fearful of. With Todd Bowles, he's just there. Like that. The offensive guys tend to be more, okay, we're not going to get emotional. We're going to make sure that we're running our offense. It's more about precision and enthusiasm or all of that. With Todd Bowles, it's just like he's standing there. And I don't know if that just doesn't get the team really all that fired up. And look, they're pro athletes. Do they need that? Probably not. Brady can handle that. We've seen that for 20 plus years. He gets sometimes 2 amps for games, right? But yeah, it's just a weird setup there. I mean, they'll slog their way into the playoffs at 8 and perhaps, and then what happens. But how can we think that they're going to make any kind of playoff run? They can't put 2 good quarters together. How are they going to put together 4 good games against quality opponents?
Together.
They can put 2 good series together. Yeah. You're right, Ian. They can't. It's like watching Green Bay. This is what I've watched all year with Green Bay. It's like, oh, that looks good. And then the next series it's 3 and out or a turnover or a bad holding call or whatever. And I think both quarterbacks are feeling, I'm sure Brady and Rodgers probably, have some connection. And I think they're pretty good friends. They probably talk to each other and go, man, this has just not been good this year. We can't seem to get the support that we need at this point.
Well, and that's the thing. It's the coaching staff has shown no ability to adjust or read the game. There's no sense. Like I said, to start the game, they decided to come out and do the exact same thing as Miami did. And Miami got blown out last week. And what happened? Well, they got blown out because the 49ers offense just took them to town. And it's like, well, what do you expect? You blitz just like Miami did, and you're going to get burnt. It's those type of things that just consistently throughout the entire season have just shown just an utter lack of your surroundings. You're like we talked about it with the with the stats being brought up about the efficiency earlier in the season with the running versus passing and the dismissing of that by Byron Leftwich. And it's like, okay, well, that kind of tells me that you're not really aware of what's going on. And that makes sense based on what we see, and the product on the field speaks for itself. Same thing can be said about the head coach, where it's, you got to get your team ready to play these games, and you're just not doing it. And this team is consistently not prepared for any, wrinkle in the system. Like they do well on those opening drives where they can put some plays together and game plan and everything like that. But then you're left up to the coaches, whatever they want to do, and it just doesn't seem to be working. Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I mean, this team I think is going to make the playoffs, but then again, it might come down to that big showdown with Carolina late in the season, which I can't believe I'm saying. So, yeah, Jalen Hurts is the MVP, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely,
100%. Like I think we talked about this Um, we've been talking about this the last couple of weeks, mostly last week because you're starting to really kind of look at the performance. And I think, thankfully, John, and I thought this was going to be another one of those. I'm going to roll my eyes because people are just going to go over the top, like the Patrick Mahomes touchdown pass yesterday. It's like I don't want to be that guy, John. I mean, it was
Mhm.
cool looking. Don't get me wrong, but much like the reaction that we see. Just about anything he does, it's so over the top. Like, we're talking about, oh my god, this guy's the greatest ever. The guy was wide open. Okay, let's get a little, let's pump the brakes a little bit here. Okay, the guy's running to the sideline. You have a wide receiver sitting on the sideline. Okay, he tossed it to a wide open guy. Great, that's awesome. Like I said, it was a cool looking play, but you know how it is. Like people get a little over the top. It's oh my god. It's this, that, and the other. Patrick Mahomes does things that no one else does except for Brett Favre and Warren Moon and Steve Young and Matt Stafford and Aaron Rodgers and I mean I could go on and on. I mean, so it was kind of nice to see that come back down to earth, or at least I hope that's the case because um, in a span of about 3 or 4 hours, the MVP race, which I thought Jalen Hurts was making noise in and was probably still slightly behind Patrick Mahomes, completely switched because Jalen Hurts had yet another just superb performance. He really hasn't had a bad game all season.
No,
Yeah,
probably the only core game he had was the turnover fest against Washington. Their only loss,
yeah,
but he's 12-1, right?
yeah.
I mean, yeah, he's played spectacularly this year. The whole leadership thing and taking a team that was 9-8 last year and got manhandled by Tampa in the wild card round to come back this year and be the best team in football at 12-1. A lot of that is because of Jalen Hurts, and obviously they've got a really well-rounded team as well. But Mahomes threw 3 more interceptions
Yeah.
yesterday, so those things are
Some
piling
bad
up as
ones too.
well.
Some really bad
Yeah,
ones. And look,
yeah.
the common comp, or at least one that I've seen with from people that actually know what they're talking about with football, is Brett Favre.
Oh yeah, I've been
And
saying it for years.
yeah,
Yeah.
and look, people are like, oh well, Brett Favre turned the ball. Well, look, Patrick Mahomes turns the ball over a lot too. Let's not
Mm-hmm.
forget too, like last year or the year before, it was, I mean, incredible interception luck. Like, and I'm not saying that other quarterbacks don't have that. Sure, every quarterback has some interception luck here and again, but Patrick Mahomes was above and beyond that. So, like, he turns the ball over quite a bit. And for the talk that Mahomes fans were saying about Josh Allen, they both lead the league now in interceptions. And
Mm-hmm.
this isn't something new or something like, oh, just having an off season. No, this is kind of what the deal is. The 1 year that his interception numbers like looked really good, I think, like I said, there were a lot of dropped ones in there, and we see it every week where his style of play produces a lot of opportunities for defenses. And yeah, I know it gets praised among with some people because they're more enamored with the flashiness and the pizzazz than the actual ability to play quarterback. But I see a guy who's, yeah, he's a really good player. Don't get me wrong, but there's a lot of really good quarterbacks in this league, and a guy that we've been down on all season last night kind of reemerged a little bit, and Justin Herbert had a really good game. So getting back to this Jalen Hurts, Patrick Mahomes thing, um, the stats are nearly identical. Again, if you rightfully give Jalen Hurts credit for his rushing ability, which I think is obviously a big part of it because he has 10 rushing touchdowns and he's such a dangerous element, dangerous weapon from that perspective. Where, you look at, we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, it's like 25% of Patrick Mahomes' touchdowns come within like the 5 yard line, which is fine. They all count the same. But let's not put so much weight into the what two total touchdown lead that Patrick Mahomes has right now. Like we're not talking about 10 touchdowns here. We're talking about two
Mm-hmm.
and a record disparity of 3 wins. And a player who, like I said, has aside from a little hiccup against Washington, has been superb. And if that's the standard for having a hiccup, well, Patrick Mahomes has had a lot more hiccups this season than Jalen Hurts. So to me, I'm looking at it across the board. Yeah, Jalen Hurts is the MVP, and it should be a slam dunk at this point. And I think the wins are starting to shift favor.
I think Burrow may have surpassed
Oh, he could
Patrick
have.
Mahomes for second in MVP voting because he's been doing it with like without a full complement of skill guys, right? I mean, it's like every week Mixon's out, or obviously did it without Jamar Chase for 5 weeks, and then Chase comes back and T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd are out. And he's playing in a fairly competitive division. And they got off to an 0-2 start, and since then I think they've been maybe the best team in the AFC since that 0-2 start. Then 9-2 over the last 11 games. So yeah, I think I'm voting for the MVP, and I think this is the first year you're going to get 5 choices, like you do with other sports. It would be Hurts, Burrow. I'd go Mahomes third. I'd still put Allen fourth. I mean, the team is going to end up winning 13 games thereabouts, and he's still such a force as a runner, and he's tough and good leadership and all that. And then you throw a defensive guy in there, Micah Parsons or Nick Bosa, because they're both just unblockable at this point. But yeah, I would put Burrow ahead of Mahomes right now. I beat him last week, so that's enough to flip the script a little bit. And in your comparison, and we've been saying it for since we've been doing this show, is Brett Favre, Patrick Mahomes. Favre threw an interception in overtime against the Giants in the 2007 NFC Championship game. He threw a huge interception against New Orleans in the 2009 NFC Championship game. Mahomes threw an interception in last year's AFC Championship game. They had the ball first. He throws a pick against Cincinnati, who goes down and kicks a field goal.
And he had 3 losses this year. Guess what he did?
Yeah,
he threw interceptions late. So this is a thing with him. There's enough to sit there and say, no, this isn't just a lapse in judgment. He's under a microscope because people have anointed him the greatest thing that's ever walked on the football field. And, from day one, I've been pushing back on that because it's incredibly short-sighted, one, to think that this early, and two, to completely just ignore everything that's happened in the history of this game. Because like I said, every week we have to listen to, we've never seen this before. Yes, we have, people. The NFL's been around for a very long time. There's been a lot of very great players in this league. And this isn't just about, people obviously will gravitate and say, you're just a Tom Brady fan. You're threatened by this, threatened by that. I'm like, first off, there is nothing I'm less threatened by than some player coming and surpassing Tom Brady's legacy. Trust me, I sleep very well at night knowing that his legacy is very, very, very secure. Okay. This is about everything else. How is it that he's already surpassed Peyton Manning or John Elway or Joe Montana or Steve Young or even Brett Favre? I mean, at least give hate the human being all you want, by all means. I mean, go at it. The guy is a grade A scumbag, if you want to think about it. But scoundrel, yes. From a football standpoint, though, the guy was a 3-time MVP. He led the Packers to 2 Super Bowls, won one, lost one. He did a lot of this backyard style type football where it's like, oh my God, who would have ever thought to throw a crossbody across the field? Well, someone who doesn't really care too much about the possible end result. And that is something that obviously got Brett Favre in trouble, but also produced a lot of his great plays. And you can say a lot of the same things about that's right. You can say the same thing about Patrick Mahomes. So, yeah, it's just to me it's just I don't know. We're gonna keep getting this because he's the anointed media darling. So anytime he does something, it's gonna get over the top. But I think very clearly right now, when we're talking about in 2022, it's Jalen Hurts' award to lose at this point because and it's gonna be very hard for him to lose it. You're gonna have to have. See, it's not just about Patrick Mahomes now. Like before, it was like, well, if he keeps going out and having some good performances, he's going to win. It's like, no, I mean, he could still have a couple good performances here, but it really depends on what Jalen Hurts does. If Jalen Hurts just exists and does what he's been doing the last, 13 weeks over the next 4 weeks, he's going to run away with this award. Like Patrick Mahomes can have a great game where he shows up and does some flashy things and people can get crazy and everything like that. But it's still going to be Jalen Hurts' award because at the end of the day, his team has 3 more wins. And we know that's a big part of the MVP, or at least we like to think it is, the quarterback, the best quarterback on the best team, they usually win those MVP. And I think, that's what's favoring, obviously, Jalen Hurts right now. And, of course, his ability because, like we said, he's really been as close to flawless as you can possibly be this season.
he's made a pretty similar jump the way that Josh Allen made the jump in his third year, where he went from being this raw, great runner, inconsistent passer to all of a sudden completing 60, 78% of his passes. Jalen Hurts has done the same thing. I think there's some comparison between the two quarterbacks. Now, Josh Allen is like a unicorn. There aren't many guys that are 6'5", 250 that run like that, have that kind of arm. But Hurts is, kind of a smaller version of him. He's about 6'1", 230. Very powerful guy as well. Strong arm, not quite as strong as Allen, but, he's just developed. Every single game he gets better. The coaching staff's done a good job, and he obviously has all that leadership ability that you like. I just find it interesting that, he's the one quarterback that went from Alabama to Oklahoma. The Alabama quarterbacks, Mac Jones and Tua, they've been okay.
Yeah.
The two Oklahoma quarterbacks, Baker Mayfield and Kyler Murray, at times are like very, very frustrating to watch. They were both the number one overall picks, both Heisman Trophy winners, all that. And here's Jalen Hurts, who of those five quarterbacks is the only one not selected in the first round, and he's sitting on an MVP right now. He's just worked so hard to become an elite quarterback, and you got to give him a ton of credit. And Philadelphia was smart enough to draft him in the second round when they already had what they thought, or what most people thought was their franchise quarterback in Carson Wentz. But they saw enough to say, maybe we've got to get someone in here. Push Wentz. Wentz wasn't competitive enough to push back against Hurts, and the rest is history. You get the potential MVP, and Carson Wentz went from Indianapolis to Washington.
Yeah, and look, I mean, obviously adding AJ Brown helps.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, the quarterback still has to make the decisions. You know what I mean? Like, obviously, that's going to make things a little bit easier for you, but you still have to execute. And that's something, again, I think people are like, oh, well, of course he has this guy. Well, no, you still have to execute. And I think Jalen Hurts has done that. And he seems to have, based on, how people talk about him off the field and just, how he carries himself, he seems to have that, that it factor we always talk about when it comes to quarterbacks. And it's a very important thing. I know there's no way to quantify it, and that seems hard for people to obviously to come to grips with what it is. But, the reality of it is there's something there that you need to have as a quarterback that isn't just about arm strength or quote unquote talent or whatever. You can't just show up and expect everything to work. Okay. And I think obviously Jalen Hurts has put in that work. And right now he's the front runner for the MVP. So, all right. Monday Night Football tonight. Patriots Cardinals. Look, the Patriots still in the mix of the for the playoffs. And, the Jets losing, the Dolphins losing, that's good news for the Patriots. I mean, again, this is a team that is growing painfully, but they're growing. They've had some stumbles along the way. I like them against Arizona, but I'm kind of worried about like Kyler Murray having his one really good game of the season against this team, because they just seem to, I don't know, not have a great time against those running quarterbacks that I believe, as you mentioned, on Friday when we gave our picks. So, what are your thoughts before we let everyone go and get back to their wonderful Monday morning? What are your thoughts on this game, and are you looking forward to it at all, or just hoping that it ends very quickly and we can all go to bed?
No, I'm looking forward to it. Arizona's 1-11 in their last 12 home games. And they made the playoffs last year. I mean, that makes absolutely no sense. They have no home field advantage, so I think that can bode well for the Patriots. Yes, you have to be worried about Kyler Murray, because we saw what Justin Fields and Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen all did against the Patriots. Mobile quarterbacks do give the Patriots a lot of problems. You got DeAndre Hopkins, who's an elite receiver. But I think you're going to see the Patriots offense, which is right at the bottom in terms of red zone efficiency, going against the worst red zone defense in the NFL in Arizona. So something's got to give there. I do like the Patriots, and I think it'll be a fairly high-scoring game, maybe in the 27-24 type range. I think they'll find a way to win this game, and if they can, they'll be 7-6, tied with the Jets and the Chargers for the last playoff spot, and they hold a tiebreaker over those two teams. So they'd be right in the playoff mix for sure.
Sorry for anyone who's actually watching on camera. I just saw me have to break up a fight between two of my cats. So,
They're just agreeing on tonight's game.
Well,
so they,
clearly, I think there's something going on outside that's got them all riled up. But that was quite the matchup there for anyone watching on camera. Yeah, look, I mean, I picked the Patriots. I am, like I said, I'm concerned with it, but at this point, you just want to see progress in areas for this Patriots team and hope that they can compete on the road in the West Coast, in prime time. That's, these moments are moments that you want to see them elevate. So, all right, that's going to do it for us here today. Give us a follow on Twitter at FPC Radio Live. And of course, head over to fullpresscoverage.com and check out all the latest and greatest coming out over there. And be sure to tune in tomorrow when we recap Monday Night Football and kind of, put a cap on this entire week and look forward to, well, the last few weeks of the season, because we're getting there. So thank you everyone for tuning in, and we will be back tomorrow.